first question I'd have is, how many of you have IT sitting in your weekly executive meeting? By show of hands. 2. How many of you have a multi-year roadmap and budget? IT, right? IT roadmap and budget that you feel like is well aligned to your business plan? Got 1? All right. Well, this is a good session for you then. As that fellow mentioned, I'm Sam Blado, CEO of Thriveon. I have with me 3 of my chief information officers, Jake, Greg, and Clint. And so we're a local IT group that helps mid-sized construction firms gain enterprise IT results. And so today we're going to explore a little bit around the role of strategic IT leadership, what it means for construction organizations, where it should be helping. And there's a whole lot more than just IT support, right? So I'm going to go through a set of questions and just get the CIO's wisdom here around what they have in helping our construction clients every day. Is the audio still okay? Yeah, okay. And so for you guys, where do you see construction firms losing the most time and margin today because of technology gaps or poor integration?
Hop in first there. So typically what we see is, you guys hear me okay? Good. A bunch of like duplicate data entry. So a lot of people end up working outside of their core systems and working in, say, Excel spreadsheets, and then having to populate the data there, re-enter it into it. And then the other thing is just like manual workflows or disconnected systems that don't talk to one another. I don't know if that resonates with anybody in the room as far as like you have software, but it's only leveraged about 20% of the time, and everybody decides to work outside of it because there's either not process around how you're supposed to do it, so everybody figures out their own way, or people weren't trained properly on how to use it. So it's kind of this scramble thing, right? So every day you guys have to get your jobs done, right? You need to complete your tasks. You're going to do whatever you have to figure it out. And there's never time to like go back and actually properly leverage the systems you have purchased and invested in. You have to add.
Yeah, well said. That's the number 1 killer is the process and people not using the products to their fullest, if you will. I mean, part of that is like Jake said, it's not necessarily that people just aren't trained, and I like to a lot of times say shame on the vendor for that, but that's the biggest thing, just leveraging the products that you have in order to get the most out of them.
When a lot of times the systems that you're using are in end of life type scenarios, or they haven't been updated or with the times, I'll call it. So people started, like Jake's saying, they pull stuff out and put in Excel, and then they start doing things outside of the process. And then it leads to some inaccuracies, whether it's data duplication or lack of data in certain scenarios. A lot of that comes into impact and a lot more rework, a lot more firefighting in different departments, whether it's like an HR or finance. You see a lot more rework being done, a lot of stuff being pulled out and then done manually. So it's hard to replicate that consistently. So you see a lot of people throwing bodies at it. Like, I need more bodies, whether it's IT or finance or even HR. I got to do payroll. I got 100 people. So now 10 of them are HR people. So I see that a lot of times you're trying to solve problems not by keeping the systems up to date or the process, but throwing more bodies at it. So you're cutting into that bottom line.
I think the other thing is like there's process, but is it documented so everybody can follow it? So if you hire somebody new, they can get onboarded with SOPs and process, or is it all tribal knowledge and it's, hey, go ask Rick in his office and we'll figure it out from there. Majority of the time we see it's tribal knowledge. It's not documented.
And then there's disruption when someone leaves for retirement or finding a new opportunity in a new position. So if it's not documented, they get stuck in those roles within the company. So they don't have any advancement opportunity, which leads to frustration, which then you lose valuable talent.
Yeah, and I guess for like specifically in organizations, where do we see the most margin get eroded? It's the field staff, right? It's the people out there turning the wrenches. It's typically where most of it's lost.
I think the other thing to point out too is that there's too much, I should say, there's a lot of personal preference that comes into play. There's a lot of, I always use the examples of PDF editors. Something as simple as that, but yet you could literally hemorrhage thousands of dollars a year because 3 or 4 different groups of people have their own preference. Like, so it's everything from the small little software subscriptions that don't talk to each other but do the same thing, all the way up to like what Jake and Greg are saying is the process side of it. They work hand in hand. And I think it's hard for people to spot that sometimes because it's not immediately obvious. There's usually a disconnect.
So what are the hidden costs of treating IT as a support function rather than a business driver? So we see a lot of cases where IT gets consumed in just day-to-day firefighting, right? Instead of being that proactive business driver. And so what are some of the hidden costs of thinking or treating it that way?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of times IT gets bunted down. Is there anybody IT in the room? Okay. So don't mean to be offensive to you. IT typically gets bunted down because they speak tech jargon. So when they're trying to talk to executives are like, I have a business to run, just do what you need to do. This isn't a strategic conversation. Just, right. I'll give you some funds to do it, but you're not sitting at the table because you're going to consume our time and talk in circles with it. So then what that leads to with the hidden cost is you're spending a bunch of time on or dollars on tools because IT is operating in a silo and you don't get the full advantage of using technology to actually accomplish your business goals, right? So you're not marrying technology as a business driver to accomplish those. And really those two should be in lockstep. One recommendation we have is if you have an internal CIO or an IT director or some form of IT, if you don't have that partner or somebody outside the building, there should be an IT representative at the table with the executive team.
And I think to add to that too, you touched on it, is the where does it become a burden and more of an asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
An asset versus a liability. A lot of people, and I think we touched on this last time a little bit, a lot of people see IT as a necessary evil. You know, it falls in the liability bucket, but really it should be leveraged as an asset. You should be using IT to be more productive, to grow your bidding and estimating. You should be using IT for really anything business development. And then when you really start integrating it, streamline your processes with it, simplify things with it. So it should be used as an asset versus just reactive support.
Well, that's a partnership. I mean, the business and IT need to partner because you can't operate IT in a silo because we do spend a lot of time buying licenses, buying tools, buying things, but we may not know everything about what the business needs to meet some of their pain points. So having those those interactions with the business to say, hey, you know, why is it taking so long for this product to go, you know, from A to B to C? You know, so project management should come into the mix to talk about maybe there's tools. There could be some wireless technology like tablets in the field, serves people, things like that. So you can digitalize a lot of the communications from end to end. Then you don't have this lack of communication. So there just really needs to be a partnership with the business and IT to make sound decisions and not just find more tools on top of tools, trying to solve solutions that may not even be a problem.
I would add to that. So the idea of IT often gets compartmentalized into keep the lights running, right? Keep the lights on, part of the business, keep the systems going versus, and that's needed, but there's no ROI in that part of it, right? That's the necessary evil part. There is the ROI in IT taking time to understand the business process of what your organization uniquely does. Estimating, project management, change orders, time management, payroll, right? The whole business flow through the organization, taking the time to understand that to make sure you have the right digital strategy, the right software systems to meet the organization's needs. What we oftentimes see is when that's absent, when IT's only playing a support function, it's up to each department head, each functional business unit leader to come up with these kind of software systems and ideas on their own. And as a result, you know, they're doing the best they can with what they have. They come up with some good ideas. They might not be the best fit for the whole business. They might not be the best long-term fit for even their own departmental area. And oftentimes they get sold a dream of some software that actually can't do what they really needed to do in the organization.
Well, and yeah, that's a good point, because then purchases of software happen per department in a silo, and you're trying to fix one specific need for design versus estimating versus project management, when you could buy one solution to fix all three problems. And then the other thing we see is they make the purchase and then they move on, and they never formally implement it following a change implementation process. So people get trained on it properly. You have the SOPs, it's documented. As you have new hires, they can actually follow the system. So it's just, yeah, kind of has a ravel effect there.
And it's worth mentioning, it doesn't have to be complicated either. I think that's where a lot of the cost comes in, is when things start to get overcomplicated. There's, like you mentioned, there's tools out there that will do what you need them to do and solve problems for multiple departments. But because so oftentimes when those decisions are made, the IT person that is central to all that, because they're not at that table, they can't say, hey, wait a minute, accounting is working on this and bidding and estimating is working on this, but you're looking at two different things when we can solve it with one. Like we can make this simpler. It doesn't have to be difficult.
And that should be IT's responsibility, right? They shouldn't be getting brought in at the last hour because you hit a roadblock on installing computers to support the new piece of software. They should be brought in on the front end of it.
And so can you guys share some real world examples of where construction companies have struggled with disconnected systems, and what's changed once IT leadership has gotten involved?
You want to jump in? So I guess show of hands, who uses Excel as their primary project management system?
It's okay to raise your hand.
Yeah. Majority of the time, what we find in construction vertical is 80–90% that's true. You may have Trimble, Procore, those other PM softwares, but they're used as a duplicate data entry platform, and Excel is actually the primary driver that PMs work on. So an exercise for the people that raise their hand, have you done an ROI study on what that would look like to not have Excel be used? So can I pick on you with this?
Sure.
Okay. What's your ERP then? Like,
I guess I'm new to all that. I use
Okay.
it for like quantity tracking and stuff like that.
okay. So typically what we see is PMs will be in Excel doing everything, forecasting, budgets versus actual, tracking that. And then on a weekly or monthly basis, they're going into their ERP system to actually update the financials. And so you have a bunch of duplicate data entry. So one thing I would challenge you with, real world example, is take that. How often are they doing it? How many PMs do you have? How many projects does each PM manage? And then what's the time it's taking to add that data into the ERP? And if you multiply that, I think you'll be shocked at the dollars that are getting eroded by, right, just that simple duplicate data entry. And then you can do that exercise across each department, because more than likely you have that happening throughout the organization in small ways. And maybe jumping ahead, the other thing to look at doing is understanding the current workflow and like how are things actually being done. So on the surface, you may say, we have this great software stack, everybody's following it. But if you actually sit down, and this should be IT's role or CIO's role, sit down with each department and actually sit at the seat of your strongest users for that department of the software. And how are they using it, and map out that workflow? Because then you'll start to identify that, oh, I thought it went from A to B, but actually it goes A, C, B, because Excel fills in here as a gap. And then from there, you can do the ROI, right, exercise as well.
And I think the big thing to remember is a lot of people don't realize when those ERP systems, when you pay that annual support, that's their job to kind of help show you how to get like the CIO or the technology leader should be identifying those gaps and those problems. But they should also be leveraging a lot of those software support contracts, if you will, to help implement some of those and help get you to the right place, so that you don't continue to have to fill in those gaps. I think majority of what we see with some of those ERPs where they're underutilized is what we talked about earlier. It's just a lack of training. It's a lack of understanding the system that they're used, because once it's in and the sale is done, fortunately, a lot of times that stuff just gets forgotten about.
Yeah. Enterprise resource planning. So it would be like more than like your financial platform. Yes.
Yeah.
No, correct. So some have like an all-in-one, like Coins or Acumatica or all-in-one solutions that do it all, and then you have your Trimble product stack like a Viewpoint. Yep. Good question.
Those are good points, and some of those that you may also want to consider is, we put in software platforms that we try to change the software to work towards processes that may not be efficient within that platform. So looking at how does your process align with the software that you're leveraging, and documenting the process. A lot of times people are just doing, like Jake was saying, the campfire approach, but actually getting it on paper, walking it through and seeing how those software packages align with your process is very important. You want to keep those software packages as out of the box as possible and not customize them. Otherwise, it creates hardship when you try to keep upgrading them for new releases, new patches, and it creates more of a headache for deployment purposes.
Yeah, and I think you guys in this industry are in a unique spot. The amount of like tools that are out there and software vendors that are knocking on your door constantly, right? There's always something new that's going to solve all of your problems. There's also the legacy systems that don't talk to anything. So there's like two ends of the spectrum, and what is the right solution for you? You can buy software all day long and invest tons of dollars for it without getting any farther ahead. So one thing to do as a first step is define your processes and make sure they're documented. So that way, when you actually, to Greg's point, buy the software, you can leverage it.
And another good point that Jake was sort of alluding to is data flow through your environment. Some systems don't have API integration, some of your more legacy type ones. Others may have limited, API integration. So trying to cut down on the double entry or duplicate data part of the job is really going to come into a light when you look at the different platforms that you're going to leverage. You really want to have something robust that can communicate with a variety of platforms. Like Jake says, everyone's selling you the best things, sliced bread, but you really need to look at how it's going to benefit your organization with your environment.
And I would say that is a shift we're seeing right now. The all-in-one was kind of king. Previously, the new shift is going with best-in-breed solutions that talk together natively out of the box. Just be cautious on both fronts, right? An all-in-one usually does a lot of things kind of good, and best-in-breed, if it actually works, is awesome, but they don't always talk together to the extent that they try to sell you on.
What other pitfalls are you guys seeing?
That's really one of the biggest ones is just the disconnect. Food systems and I think that's probably the reason why we tell everybody put IT leadership at the table. Let somebody that sees how these systems work day in and day out, who understands them, help bridge that gap. That's
I think, yeah, we see, and I kind of alluded to it before, software that's bought is usually only used about 20 to 30% of its full capacity. So if you think of that from an investment perspective versus an ROI, there's a pretty big delta there.
Some of that's lacking a strategic plan and how it's going to be long-term leveraged, looked at. So having someone who's up above the weeds, I'm going to call it, looking at where you want to go is really what you need, you know, because if you look at the IT operations side of the house, the day in and day out is we're just fighting fires. You know, I'm getting 50 tickets a day. My boss has got my KPIs flaunted in front of me every day. I need to make some traction on that front because my bonus might be on that front. Some other financial motivators might be there as well. But really what you need to do is say, okay, we need to get ahead of it. We need to be proactive instead of reacting day in and day out. And that's the biggest challenge for a lot of the IT operations groups. There's just so many things being thrown out at you with no priority list set or no strategy in place. So I'm in the weeds and I'm not seeing where I'm going to go. So I could be doing circles in the weeds, doing nothing. Or I could maybe say, hey, let's take a minute, let's regroup, let's maybe implement a couple things to proactively, you know, get some of the noise out of the environment, then move forward. So that's a big thing, is too much bogged down with firefighting and saving the day and not saying, hey, proactively, how can we get out of this and start being more stable states. All that.
I think one of the things that's interesting is we're talking a lot about business process, right? And software systems. You're estimating your project management, invoicing. These systems cost a lot of money. And when they're only used 20% versus what they could be, we've seen a delta in organizations when they're really using their software the right way or more fully, dropping another 1%, 2%, 3% of revenue to the bottom line. And so the day in and day out minutia, it shows in frustration of staff. It shows just in rework. It shows in needing extra people, but it's also kind of sneaky because there isn't a line item that says, wow, our technology adoption to where our business is at is so far off. We're missing out on a whole bunch of actual margin. It just quietly sits there, and everybody's grown up with it over time. It didn't get that way overnight. It just slowly grew. And so a lot of businesses are just used to operating that way with that sort of pain. Anything else to add related to how fractional CIOs help eliminate double entry, unifying the office with field and operations?
No, it's just understanding, like I said, understanding that business workflow, mapping it out and looking for the gaps, and then looking at what can we fix, what could we just tweak in the current systems, right? That's what we're always trying to do, because changing software is a pain in the butt. So what can we modify now to gain you those efficiencies and fix the problems? And then if needed, go through an actual like full digital strategy of where you're at today versus future state and evaluating different software solutions.
So what signs should executives look for that outdated systems are quietly eroding their margins, right? So from the other side of the table, then on it, right? How should the rest of the business look at it? What sort of signs could they see?
And a lot of times you're going to see departments throwing more bodies at the problems. You know, they're like, we need a quick fix, we need to hire them, we're going to throw some more bodies on the mix. And that'll work for short term, but next thing you know, we have 50 people in, say, finance, and that's not really where our money gets made. So looking at throwing bodies at the thing, it could be like, oh, we're not getting payroll out on time. It could be some other deliverables around project management. There's going to be delays, and there's going to be a lot of extra effort to accomplish different projects, different deliverable tasks. And that's usually a good sign that says, hey, we need to take a break for a second, step back, reevaluate how we do the process flows and what systems we're leveraging. and then see like, well, we haven't put any money towards our HR platform or our finance platform. Let's look at different solutions that would make a better fit for the company from like end to end.
I'd say too, asking the question, is this the way we've always done it? Because that's a common phrase I tend to hear quite a bit is, well, we've always done it that way. And similar to Greg's point, if you're adding bodies, but the workload's not getting smaller, roles aren't really changing. But there's ways to see some of those inefficiencies, and I think probably a big part of it is sometimes it just takes bringing in somebody from outside, looking in and having that perspective. Get wrapped up in our jobs and our day-to-day blinders, if you will. Is that a word? We don't always see those things.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about the numbers. Like if you can't get accurate scorecard information without spending a bunch of time creating your scorecard on a weekly or monthly basis, or if it's delayed by a month or two and you can't really understand how profitable a job is until it closes out and follows that process months later, like that stuff shouldn't be normal. You should be able to get that data at your fingertips, and something's probably off there that needs to get fixed.
Is there even with all the change that's happening in the construction space around software, right? Is there even like if we haven't evaluated or looked at this in so many years, it could be time to just spend a little time relooking at things?
That's a tough one. Because it takes some effort, right? It's changing constantly. There's a lot of tools that have AI baked into them now, but I think you start with identifying those signals and going through a mapping process before you dig into doing software evaluation. Typically what we end up seeing is, again, somebody knocks on your door and you're like constantly evaluating software. And then it turns into this, like every 2 to 3 years, you're buying new software versus just investing in what you've already bought and scaling it out.
Most enterprise software should run you about 10 to 15 years if it's done right and you've done the right decision making. If you're replacing it in 2 to 3 years, probably overlook something in your evaluation process or your due diligence phase. So when you look at it, you should say, we want to really put it in for 10 years, run it like that. But that doesn't always happen. We sometimes have a shift in our business strategies. So something may skew that, but usually you want to capitalize that investment over probably 10 years.
What differentiates a fractional CIO role from what most construction firms currently have for IT leadership?
So yeah, I can take this one. I guess, does this sound different, right? I don't know how many people actually have ELT or executive weekly team meetings. You guys do regular leadership team meetings. Does this approach sound different of like, why would you not have IT in it today versus maybe it makes sense to have IT?
Sense other than the fact we outsource our IT.
Yeah.
That's
Yep. Okay. Fully outsourced, so no internal. Yeah. So that's one thing we see, right? The other thing we see is we have an internal IT manager / help desk person, depending on the size of the organization. You would have IT manager and then a couple of people underneath it. And they're so caught up in the day-to-day supporting the business, keeping the lights on, like we said, reactive. They also don't necessarily have that strategic thinking or the ability or the time to pull above it. So where an outsourced provider can come into play or a fractional CIO is filling that gap, right, between the tactical and the strategic layer.
How do you normally get your IT initiatives defined? Then do you, as a business, come together and define like different things that are causing issues within the process, or do you have them come and evaluate different things?
Well, basically, go right to what you guys were talking about, that department leaders are in charge of trying to figure out solutions that their department see. And project management's not talking to estimating, it's not talking to field. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
You don't have to tell us who it is or anything like that, but with your outsourced IT, do they offer anything like that? Do they bring any type of strategic planning or any type of initiative outside of hardware life cycles or anything like that?
I cannot say for sure. That's, you know.
One other thing, like, and IT should be involved in this too, but one thing we found beneficial is standing up like an innovation team. So getting those department heads or people from those departments together and saying like, what are our challenges in our workflow, and then working as a collective team to solve it. Innovation team for that, and then I don't know if anybody started to dabble in AI, but using that team and having them use AI to solve some business cases as well has been valuable.
One thing you see a lot of is the shadow AI starting to pop up. Different departments are using it in different ways. Not using essential purchased products, so your stuff is publicly exposed when you do different things. So that's just something to keep in mind. But the innovation group doesn't have to meet like weekly. It could be a quarterly thing or something on an annual basis. But usually that collaboration will bring up a lot of ideas of where people are having struggles, and you can find some solutions around that. That's the question.
Yeah, if you were to bring in like an executive level IT position, have you seen better success in doing that from promoting within? Like we have one IT professional, not that like a problem solving that, you know, right now he's just fixing kind of putting out fires type of stuff. Or hiring from outside with someone that's got experience in all the programs that you're already familiar with that could lead something like that.
I think it depends.
I mean, it's gonna vary from personality to personality. Like you're summarizing, it's probably best to bring someone in from external. You know, but maybe you do have someone in-house that is more strategic, bringing a lot of ideas. Maybe they're going to the educational events, learning some new current trends, brings it back to the table.
Have you seen success either one way or the other that's worked better, or?
A lot of times the internal guy is focused on the break fix type of life. And so promoting them up doesn't, 90% of the time probably isn't very successful. The one advantage they do have is they do know the business, they know the key stakeholders, they have relationships that they can leverage. So that might give them a little bit of a 10% bump. But usually if you're looking for someone strategic, you need to have the lingo, you know, let's not talk in acronyms, mystic tech jargon.
Would you be comfortable if that individual sitting at the executive team meeting, talking about business goals? Okay.
Yeah.
So
No.
typically we see,
Yeah, that's your answer, right?
Yeah.
It's, yeah. So oftentimes, internal IT, they're really great at keeping the lights on, right? And they're also become very consumed with that. And their love is of technology. Okay, it's needed, it's important. Where you have an internal IT person who is really business focused, really business curious, yet they have the technology skill set, now you maybe have somebody that over time can be guided, over, right, 2, 3, 5 years can be guided into being more of a strategist. Typically, we would see bringing in somebody from the outside who's been there, done that, is focused on really a business level, who can sit in on a weekly executive meeting and, you know, have a conversation about where we headed, you know, our annual goals, our quarterly rocks, P&L management, right? Could just really be in tune and lockstep and not get into the technology weeds. So does that help?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking like the person you're describing. There's not a lot of them out there, and it might be hard to find someone that's familiar with the systems you're already using, so you're not learning that to them. And that's a business strategic right?
Yeah, strategy is awesome. Yep. So what's interesting about, yes, it's more rare, right? Because then there's also, so what we're looking for is somebody who understands technology well enough, but yet business well enough. And then the idea of them being familiar with your exact software applications is a nice to have, not a need to have, actually. And so what you heard these three talk about a little bit is taking time to walk through the business workflow with each department to say, how are we using the system today? What complaints do we have? Where are we working outside of the software? And really creating a case for change. Even if we're not changing software, it's creating a case for change. It's what have the staff always been asking for? So that then we can take the IT, the CIO can take the time to assess, can we get that improvement from our existing investment? Can we make some small tweaks to make that happen? And so the right individual is going to be able to navigate new software programs actually fairly easily, because they're looking at it through, they have the knowledge of technology, then they're looking at it through your unique business construct. So most folks, when we first talked about that idea, it sounds like, yeah, is it really that easy? But it is. So like, for example, we help clients with new software we've never seen before all the time. But by taking a business first approach and just knowing how technology works, it allows us to do that. So
I tend to have in the back of my mind usually that switching software is the last resort. Usually you can make huge progress in the software that you have as long as it's built for the type of business.
And this is a bit of a side note, but in what you're saying, it just made me think of it. Like a lot of organizations say, so-and-so, it's their software, so-and-so owns all of our software. They're the experts in it. To scale, what we recommend you shift to is each department owns their specific software. So you have like a champion over the top of it and then a super user, depending on your size, right? They might be the same person. They're the ones that are the experts in the workflow and the process, and then building the SOP and maintaining it. IT from the back end supports it and has admin access to do the technical things in infrastructure. But when it comes to the workflow, that's where you have to engage with each department. So that might be a slight shift of how you're looking at it too. Good question. Yeah.
Off topic
Yeah.
here, but the integration of AI into these new softwares, is there the concern of information ownership with them? Let's say, for example, Procore's preaching that they have AI, but I know if you use ChatGPT, something along those lines, that's data is public. So Procore is keeping data, but is it sharing it with how they make decisions on their product level?
So it's a fairly loaded question. Procore's good, just because we recently looked at the contract there for that. But you would, as they come out with AI, you should look through the language of the agreement, because some of it's spelled out that they are going to share it with all their other resources internally to help improve client experience for all of their customers. So you just be cautious and read through the legal pieces of that.
What you're saying is it's not necessarily public, but
They will use it to train it to expand that. Yeah.
So it's all their client base has exposure to your data. To train those models to respond back.
Your
So all
main
your secret sauce is now public, so.
the mainstream, like a Procore, right? Even if they use it to train their model, you can't, like, I can't look up or punch it in and find your information. They have those safeguards in place.
something like ChatGPT, on the other hand, the free product, that's public. The paid for version, when it's configured correctly, then it can stay private, right? So there's even some things that can be done with a product like ChatGPT, which is widely known as putting your information as out in the public in order to get the advantages while still keeping your information secure.
Yeah.
Private. I think AI in general has just, if we're talking a lot about applications and having the right application stack is a good foundational layer that needs to be put in place. And AI is like exponentially made all this more complex and just opened up a bunch of more security risk, but also I think business risk, not just in information, but we want people to innovate, but we want people to innovate productively. not to be spending time creating things that don't matter for the business. And now we've just, if we're gonna provide these tools, how are we doing that in a way that our different department and functional areas are actually producing products or work product that helps move the business forward? Maybe you guys wanna add to that a little bit.
Well, with AI advancements, I mean, you're seeing a lot of things now in other industries as well, just like outbound calling routines, creating tickets with opportunities within Salesforce platforms. There's all things that you can get out of the box that do these things. But a lot of times you find that there's no guardrails around it. So you'd be like, clear cache. Oh, let's delete all your records. That's not what I wanted. But if you don't have to find, you can even ask it like, why did you do it? I don't know. We've already cleared that from memory. So we'll never know why that occurred. So without the guardrails, there is some risk to the business. It could be risk to different projects, depending on what you're doing. But AI is, if companies can leverage AI in an efficient, safe manner, it gives them a little bit of an advantage because there's only so many people you can hire at so many times of the year. So you really got to look at what you have, what you can automate, what you can do teams and with processes defined that allows you the ability to automate those things if it's repeatable. So AI becomes a real, people love AI. It becomes a shadow AI if you don't have some type of governance over them. So each department will handle AI in a different way and different tool sets. So what you really want to do is have one tool set. You want to make sure it's internal to the organization, and you want to control it, by like Procore. We want to control that in the Procore app only for us. So that would be some things to ask your vendors as you're looking at these different solutions. But the AI advantage will give companies, even construction companies, like downstream.
Yeah, I would add to that and say, Procore is a keep picking up, but it's a good example. AI should always be supplementary, not a replacement. Really anything. And you look at Procore, the core of their software is still the same. It's still 95% human driven, but they have that AI augmentation that helps the process along and helps with productivity. Any type of AI tool that you use should be that way. If people are thinking that they can go out and invest in AI to replace W2 labor, it's going to fail. It should enhance it.
I think how you're looking at it from doubt it first, like AI should always be looked at if it's in whatever tool, it's not secure until you've checked off the boxes and written it right through the contract or what it entails.
Yeah, if it's for your users of the product.
What technology trends should construction executives be paying attention to in the next 3 to 5 years? How can they prepare right now?
AI, I think we covered that one, right? The best in breed approach, I think, has a pretty strong wave that's going to hit here if it hasn't hit you already. And to prepare, it comes back to what we talked about before, like document your workflow and your processes. So that way, when somebody knocks on your door, you're ready to say, yep, this is actually a need, we should invest in it, or this is noise and it's a waste of money and time right now.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing you got to look at is CMMC requirements. Government, a lot of the government contracts, whether it's fed or state, are requiring a lot more third-party vendor authentication or validation. So you might not be the direct person that's with that contract, but you're downstream from them. So you might have to do some answering around the federal requirements, security, cybersecurity stuff. And then we're seeing a lot more of that coming to play with like NIST frameworks. It's applying to the construction industry because of this third party and the way the government's changed their mantle of, hey, everyone's going to get hacked, we're going to have to live with it. Hey, we can do things better, more secure, and still have that sense of security, I would say.
I think the other things we talk about, like AI, making sure your data is clean and organized and you don't have things all over the place, and that the right security controls are in place. Because if you layer on AI, you're going to create risk pretty quickly as far as it finding information that it shouldn't.
Well, clean data in itself is a big win, because a lot of times you have siloed data all over the place, duplicated, and if you start merging all that data together, there's a huge effort for cleanup and to get the valid results out of the AI modeling. So, cleaning your data is going to be something that you'll hear more and more about as well downstream.
So So if a construction CEO is ready to stop skating by with IT and getting really strategic benefit it was meant to be, what are 3 steps that they could take?
I think the simplest, and this is kind of repeat throughout the whole time we've talked here, but bringing an IT leader into the business planning, creating that strategy that blends technology with the business goals. It's probably the biggest thing you could do to drive things forward.
Yeah, bringing someone in to be held accountable and put that strategy together and work with the business, sort of be that buffer between the operational IT and the execs, I think is what Jake's saying. So someone who's going to be held accountable for those actions that go forward.
I agree. IT leadership is where it's at. Just bringing that in, whether it's in-house, whether it's third party, just get some sort of eyes started on the strategic vision of your IT.
Yeah, the roadmap is very important. And then that'll dovetail into like how much are we budgeting per year across all the different businesses for IT spend. And you can see at that point, I think Clint may have referenced, you can remove the double spend on software licenses, for example, like if I'm buying Foxit versus Acrobat or Adobe. You know, you can say, we're only gonna do one, we're gonna standardize, we're gonna get a bulk rate on it, go that route. So, you know, it's really that big picture look that really the companies, especially smaller, mid-sized companies may not have. They might not want to bring in 10 IT guys because then you're a cost center. So if you can, you know, bring in certain key elements and then outsource other elements, like the gentleman in the corner, you know, maybe you just do help desk outsourced or level 1, 2. And then you keep some of your other guys for strategic project work. You can go that route too.
Yeah, that's the two. Go through the physical exercise of it. It's one thing to talk about it, and it's one thing to have an annual meeting or bring ideas together, that sort of thing. But there's really something to be said, whether it's on a whiteboard or a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet, you know, whatever. Like go through the process where there's something visual, intangible. We talked in an earlier session about the importance of tabletop exercises. This is doing an IT roadmap for the first time can kind of be like that tabletop exercise for what your strategic vision looks like. And to actually see it, there's some benefit to having the whole group together, pointing out and poking holes in where things don't necessarily line up. And it does nothing more than just generate a lot of conversation and get some ideas going. So go through the physical process of laying out that roadmap.
So IT in the weekly exec meeting, creating a multi-year roadmap and budget aligned to the plan.
Not as a silo.
And not as and working with all departments.
Yeah.
Not in a silo only for IT, but right for the betterment of every other business function.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. What, yeah, we've got some time left, so questions, yeah.
Just in that conversation for the next 5 years, been hearing a lot that software costs are coming down so rapidly. Do you see an opportunity, and given the industry has a lot of antiquated software, do you see an opportunity for customized software specific for companies?
Yeah, the software cost coming down is interesting because typically right now with any SaaS agreement you sign, it's like 8 to 10% annual increase, right? Yes, custom software, I think, especially as you layer on AI, creates an opportunity there that doesn't exist at the moment. So you're going to have some of these legacy softwares that have duct tape and baling wired things together to get by that are just going to fall to the wayside because, yes. So to answer your question, it's going to happen. But it's probably, I'd say, at least 3 years out before that hits.
But you do need to be cognizant of maybe the systems you're leveraging might be the baling wire ones. So you might want to say, hey, we got 3 years to think about this and start looking at different solutions. Proactively looking at the solutions ahead of time, knowing that you may have to get off one of your solutions. Usually better than like, oh, well, next week it goes away and now I have to get something new. So you look at the physical or the financial feasibility of these apps as well as the functionality of them. you could make you go in a different direction that route.
What's tough about right, your question is a yes. The support side of it, usually when we customize your software, that could go down versus buying a Trimble solution, but then your support costs are, you just gotta balance that out.
Does that answer what you're, yeah, what other questions might you prepare up?
We've seen for, like privately held companies and creating their own AI platform.
A lot of
Serious
times,
much of that, I've heard that's. being employed with it. Maybe already doing.
well, there is tools you can put in place that limit the exposure or limit your ability to leverage different platforms. Ideally, you know, with a smaller privately held company, you have some feasibility and flexibility because you're not held to some of the compliance frameworks about like a publicly traded company. So what you want to do is actually look at, like with Azure, you can get your own personal ChatGPT sessions stood up, go that route. Try not to allow people to use it in the public sector. Company called Quiller.ai, Quilr.ai. They do a lot of endpoint monitoring and sort of they do some phishing stuff and they can track different platforms that you can have access to. And it's sort of in the process flow itself that says, hey, you sure you want to do this? This is private information. This is health information. And so it allows them to still leverage their tools, but then prompts them to say, hey, you shouldn't click this link because the subject doesn't line up with this or that, even though you might be expecting something from that email address. So, I mean, there is tools out there. Just look and see which one fits your needs, I would say. And make sure that you do have some type of governance around like what's acceptable usage for that. Like an acceptable usage policy is normally what everyone has for normal systems. Should have the same thing, like a governance platform, much like your data.
I guess my question would be too is, what would the reason be for wanting to go with a private AI cloud or a private AI instance when you have an out-of-the-box solution that can be made private and has those security safeguards in place already? Is there?
Want to ask like internal private questions.
Sure.
About the company, you know, what was our hourly rate on an excavator 5 years, for example, right? Like, you don't want that information getting out. What's our productivity on this type of work in the situation, but that can grow within the company? Because that's what I was kind of.
I think
Would be just completely private information for that company for use.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because too, you're seeing even things like ChatGPT right now. They're SOC 2 compliant. They've got I think did they make HIPAA yet? Yeah, they're HIPAA compliant there. So they've got a lot of those security safeguards in place where even reading through the contracts, you'll find that your information really is in that private instance. So that's where I would think, depending on what the use case is, do you want to leverage something for informational purposes, research, so on and so forth, or do you actually want to train the generative AI for a very specific use case that's niche to your business? What's that?
That future. We did, so just an example, in our office, we did a project, it was a unit price bid, right? It had all the quantities, bill the price. We uploaded all, but we did it ourselves, gave them the price. And just as a check, we put it all in ChatGPT, put it on specs, all the plans, bid all.
Yep.
The ChatGPT came up with a price that was within 3% of the price.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
There's opportunity there. What are they?
I think it depends because looking at the cost, right? Like,
Yeah,
well, that's the other thing too. Like when you look at AI, like how many different AI companies are out there that are investing literally billions of dollars into what they're doing. So you've got Gemini out there, you've got Grok, you've got ChatGPT, you've got Copilot with Microsoft, and now you're starting to see there's in the software development world, there's a handful of them that are doing really well with that. So they're already starting to break off into those those niche markets, if you will. And the people and the capital that they're putting behind these different AI engines, and 99% of them are generative AI, right? They're nothing that's super duper special. They're doing very specific training to where I don't think it's going to be too far off for the construction industry starts to see basically like call it ChatGPT, right, for construction. I don't know if that's what they're going to call it, but if they do, they will be royalties for it, as I said first.
We don't, I would say all the organizations that we talk to are going cloud-based with it, not trying to do a private internal.
I think the heart of your question goes to the use case. So AI isn't a Swiss Army knife. There isn't just one route. And so based upon the business use case, and if you're trying to really just create an internal knowledge base, that's one thing. There's a certain AI platform that might be better at that. Yet, if what you're trying to do is that plus gather in external information, now that might be a whole different platform. And so all those things kind of get intertwined into what might be the best route to go versus, what tool to use when. So,
And you will start to see like Procore, Build Ops, et cetera, has AI starting to be built into their software. You are going to see specific AI companies start to spring up focused on your industry, just like those companies, right, that come knocking at your door.
You're already seeing that in other industries, like real estate has these market analysis AI programs now running in their stuff, like Max, you'll see, like if I want to buy a house in this market, what is my 5-year evaluation of that purchase? So you're seeing a lot more AI being introduced in other sectors. So I would anticipate it's going to become construction more.
Yeah. And we're already doing things too with some of the custom GPTs, personas, different things that you can do inside of these out of the box instances where you can tailor it to your business. From a cost standpoint, it's typically better to use one of the cloud hosts or the SaaS product. But the other thing I look at it from the security side of things is it'd be really, really hard to invest the dollars and the effort and the energy into securing that internal instance like you would get with Microsoft, Google, OpenAI. They're investing billions.
we'll take more questions here, but first I just want to, so feel free to use this QR code if you want to schedule time to talk more with our CIOs. And so you can certainly take a picture of that. That'll take you to a link. So we're happy to do that. We'll still be around here today. So if you want to catch us and chat with us, ask some questions, just we're happy to help however we can. But yeah, I know we're at time, but if anybody else has any questions, feel free to fire away.
One question you mentioned, best of breed. So is that?
Oh, yeah, I'll shut my mic off. All right, so best in breed is you have point solutions that are specific for your PMs work in this one software, your estimators work in this one software, finance works in this one software. But they're open API, so they all talk together. So the experience you get as a business is it acts like an all-in-one, where it's seamless and everything talks together, but you can stay in your specific software and it's best in class versus your all-in-one that kind of do project management good, but they're crappy, right? And they're better at, so that's what that is.
The goal is to keep people in as few programs as possible to do a day-to-day job, not have them hop from this platform or that platform or that one. Bidding uses this, electrical uses that. If you just keep them in there and they communicate with each other, then you should be able to see the data between platforms without having to give them access to it.